and that will be sent out sometime tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. Attached to that recording is going to be a feedback form. We are constantly seeking your feedback as students and alumni here at WGU. So if you could take 2 minutes to fill that out, I'm actually going to drop that into the chat once we get going, as we get going into the presentation here. So should take you no more than 2 minutes to go through and fill that out. This is part of our larger Career Quest month. So if you've joined us in the past for Career Quest, you've seen some of the sessions, always fantastic, connecting to industry professionals, companies that are actively recruiting our students and alumni here at WGU. So certainly take advantage of all of the Career Quest sessions that we have running. I will drop a link into the Career Quest page on our career site. So certainly take a look at some of the other opportunities that we have coming down the pipeline. We also have a public service hiring event coming up in the beginning of June. Another great opportunity to connect directly with local, state, and federal agencies that are actively hiring our students here. So certainly take advantage of that. As you've seen, the chat is open, so feel free to post questions into the chat. We will have a designated Q&A. I know Elena loves reviewing the chat as we go here to kind of help navigate the presentation. So feel free to utilize the chat. One thing I will say is, you know, people that have joined, you've shared where you're calling in from. I'd also encourage you, share your LinkedIn. And really build on your professional network. You know, everybody in here, whether you're a current student, an alum, it's always important to build on that professional network. So if you're comfortable, share your LinkedIn, connect with each other, really expand that professional network. So make sure you are taking advantage of that. All right, so you are not here to hear me speak. You're here to hear Elena. I'm really excited just chatting with her. She does have a fantastic podcast. So listening into some of those podcasts, you know, really love some of the things that she touches on as a talent professional, career coach, operator, integrator, and like I said, podcaster. So Elena, I'm going to pass it over to you. The floor is yours. Really excited to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. All right, so give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. All right, awesome. All right, so first of all, this is such a privilege. Like, I love talking to university people, but whether you are, you know, a master's degree student, a bachelor degree student, or, you know, just in some kind of graduate program, like, I just love having a lot of these sessions because it keeps me in tune with also what's going on, because being on the other side of the table in a corporate world, it's always nice to see, like, you know, what is happening on a university, what are some challenges you guys are dealing with, and so on, you know, as you're kind of discovering for some of you early careers, for some of you maybe experienced careers, and so on. But I'm here to share with you some of the realities of what happens behind closed doors, where decisions about your career might be made, whether now or in the future. I am also very direct and very kind of candid about what I say. I'm not going to be sharing anything that you'll see on LinkedIn. Or maybe a couple of things, but most of my aim here is really to give you the insights that you're not going to be able to gain from, you know, kind of public knowledge. And the reason I'm so open about it, because I think it's information that needs to be shared, because I think it will be helpful to you as you know, build and continue to create your career moving forward. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the reality of staying hired, right? We're going to look at the three different kind of pillars to it: stay hired, stay valued, stay visible. I'm going to share that inside knowledge. So if you're taking notes, although this is being recorded, but if you are taking notes and prefer that inside knowledge piece is really the one where you want to pay attention. And I'm also going to point out the less obvious, but most important things when it comes to your career growth. And it might not be super obvious to you, but this is crucial. So, and then of course, as much interaction as I can possibly get, I'm all ears. Please drop your questions, thoughts throughout. I will make sure to address those. All right, so why am I doing this? Who am I? Why am I here telling you about how to grow your career? So before we hopped on a call, I was actually talking to RG. I'm actually on my fourth career pivot. So I've changed my career 4 times at this stage in my life, all of it building onto the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Currently, so I'm the head of talent, but I'm actually just shifted towards operations. But I'm working in a growing company. I sit in a room at a leadership table where promotions are discussed, raises, performance, and layoffs, and where those things are decided. I'm also the person in the company where most performance problems go to. So whenever there's a problem, usually it comes to me. I'm also a founder of 2 startups. So I've learned the hard way. I've been kind of an operator integrator from like a business perspective as well. And I've also hired people for my startup. And I've also hired people and promoted people in companies that I worked with. And as RJ mentioned, I'm a career coach, a podcast host, and a number of other hats that I wear through my pivots. I really, really enjoy everything that I do. And I just kind of keep packaging it onto each other and really just creating this career for myself from being very much a generalist early in my career to then building this out and really transitioning towards operations. So that's kind of where I sit. And I'll share from, what I hear at leadership tables. So just to give you a bit of a context, I've worked in 14 different countries. So this is going to be true for a lot of different business cultures. I've worked in small companies, consulted for large organizations, and of course in the startup world. So I kind of have a good idea of the different types of company size, because context does matter here. And everything I'm going to share may not 100% apply to every company, but majority of it does. So all right, a quick question for you guys. So if you never looked, use Slido. It's pretty easy. So you just scan the QR code that you see on the screen, and it's going to pop up a question, and it's going to say, what does staying hired actually mean to you right now? And if you can just answer that question, or if you prefer, you can also drop it in a chat. Slido is anonymous, so if you feel more comfortable doing that, feel free to do that. Otherwise, you can also go to slido.com, enter the code, and then start typing up, and I'll give you guys just a few seconds to do that. All right, we have some things coming in. All right, we have a few more people typing. Keep typing. Feel free to drop it in the chat as well if you're having any technical difficulties, or if you're watching this on your phone and you're like, I can't scan this because this is on my phone. That's okay too. You can also just go to slido.com on your browser on your phone and put in the code if you can't scan, or in the chat again. And I see some chats coming in, so diligence, okay. I'll give some people are typing, so I'll give them a couple, just another 30 seconds or so. Flexibility, positivity, stability, multiple avenues, pivoting, value, staying competitive. All right, give another few seconds for the person to finish up. Consistent income, yeah. All right. Thank you guys for sharing that. So it's quite interesting every time I do this topic, and it's quite interesting because it's pretty standard that people are going to say like stability and consistent income and so on. And we'll talk about what other things you should be thinking about that are actually going to play a huge role of what staying hired means. So thank you for filling this out, and let's move on. All right, so getting hired, that is the start. Most career advice, that's where it stops. And actually, it's where it should actually begin. So most of the time, people are so worried about job search, job search, job search, but missing the point that If you play your cards right, and I like to say play, I feel like, part of I look at it as a game, and you need to know how to play it really well. So that's the best analogy I have for today. For today, but if you know how to play your cards right, it will hopefully line you up to that next opportunity. And ideally, what you want to do is create some of the things we're going to be talking about. You want to create this a brand around you, essentially, that will take you forward into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, to where employers are coming to you and not the other way around, right? So staying hired is the work, and that's what we're going to talk about more. And a lot of misconception that high performers don't get laid off, that if you are just killing it and doing your job, then that's enough. And sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The reality is also that technical skills is the floor. It is not the ceiling. I was recently, like a week and a half ago, I was in Florida. So the Floridians in the group, I really enjoyed the weather there, by the way. And it was an AI conference. I don't know, probably 2,000 people attended it from different companies. And it was all, like a lot of techies, a lot of companies that have software developers and so on. And I can tell you that through conversations, and not just at this conference, but many others, technical skills is not what comes up as the biggest differentiator. And that's why it is the floor, for better or for worse, in this current market. I'm in software development, I work in tech. And I can tell you that technical skills alone are not enough to stay hired. They are merely the foundation. And depending on where you are in your career, the more higher up you go, the less important technical skills become in most cases. Decisions about your career happen in rooms that you are not in. And the professionals that thrive don't always have the best output, meaning, we always see, like, why is this person getting promoted? Like, I do a lot more work than they do. Well, the reality is they're more visible. They have a signal that they're putting out there that is noticeable. And for better or for worse, that is just the reality. Is it fair? No. Can you do something about it? Yes. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about. So two things can be true, and two things are true here: is that it's not fair, that people get promoted are not always the best ones for that job. But also the reality is we can't necessarily control that, but we can control what we can do so that we position ourselves for that. And as I mentioned, most career advice ends at the offer letter. And I see a lot of professionals miss on opportunities and make really silly mistakes because they don't understand some of the conversations that happen behind closed doors. So the three things that we're going to kind of dive into first, in this particular order. Number one, stay hired, stay valued, and stay visible. I'm going to go deeper into each one. All right, so stay hired. What I mean by that is that a lot of times when people get hired, and they're and it's fine. Like, just by the way, a trade secret I'll tell you, depending on where you are in your career, but usually like from junior level, like entry level, to like mid level, um, the first 6 months to a year, um you should have some quick wins, but nobody's going to expect like wowza changes. Nothing drastic, let's put it that way. That's just the reality. I've sat in a lot of these conversations around, like, how long do people, like, when do people need to perform really well? Like, what do they need to prove about themselves in the first 90 days? And it's usually very low hanging fruit, right? And the mistake that I see a lot of people make is they come in and they try to embed um some of their, I don't know, traits and personalities on a culture they don't know. And that's part one. That's like the kind of mistake number one, is when you're coming into a new company, the first thing, in order to staying hired past that 1 year, is to make sure you're absorbing the company culture, right? Making sure that you're building those relationships and so on. I also, like I mentioned, I was in a recruiter seat, and when I used to look at resumes, one of the biggest red flags for me when I look at resumes is when a person is jumping too much and it doesn't make sense. So it does. There is a factor to consider here. So it's not just like jumping, because it is more prevalent these days. You kind of jump, but in a way that makes sense. If you're jumping from job to job, for example, right? Um, and it makes sense, meaning you're growing and so on. But if you're jumping like just kind of parallel, like just kind of like, what is it, horizontal? Sorry, right? It's showing me that nobody wants to keep you past 1 year. You're doing something wrong. And the reason I'm saying this is because that 1 year is the hardest part of the first part of your year. It's mistakes that you need to avoid, which we'll cover a little bit later. But so I wanted to mention that the first step in staying hired is making sure you understand the culture of the company and don't just come in with your own. You can bring your ideas and so on. Just be careful to know that you don't know what you don't know, and company culture is very important when it comes to staying hired. You need to be able to fit into that company culture and so on, which is a whole other thing. But I wanted to just mention that. Don't be the good but invisible person. So, frankly speaking, I've been in conversations where you can have really great talent that is really good technically, right? You can have like we have people that are really great, and you can be really good, but also keep in mind that the more upward you go, and when promotions are made, there's only so many slots for those promotions. The more senior you grow in your career, the less slots are available, right? And the more senior you go, again, you can be really good at that technical stuff, but it's not enough anymore. So if you're, if you're technical and you're just grinding and you're in the background and you're just doing your work and nobody really knows about it, they know you're producing work, but that's it. Nobody even, especially in a virtual environment, nobody really knows who you are and so on. That's going to hurt you, because when the push comes to shove, they're going to choose a person who's not only good but also who's visible in the company. I can spend hours about the visibility piece, which we will cover, but we'll keep it for the visibility part. So I'll try to cover hours of information in a short period that we have, but just don't be only good. You need to be visible as well. All right. Otherwise, that's a quick cut, because it comes down to how many relationships you have internally, right? So anyway, we'll cover that. Building cross-functional roots. So I understand that it's not always possible in all organizations, but if you're working in a company that has access for you to mingle, to understand what other departments do, to do kind of, a lot of companies, for example, they have opportunities for you to do different functions, to volunteer for different projects, so you can kind of be a little bit more mobile. It's called talent mobility in organizations, right? So if your company has that and you're not taking advantage of talent mobility internally, meaning you're able to participate in different things, even if that means that you're doing this outside of your regular working hours, that is kind of what you have to do if you want to continue to elevate your career. Now, I will pause here for a second. Something I had to learn the hard way, and I want to acknowledge that. Because I'm so career driven myself, and I think everybody should be creating their career, and I'm very passionate about career and business, and I think there's so many opportunities, and I love work. I just love what I do. I also recognize that it's not everybody's values. And I also recognize that not everybody wants to be climbing the career ladder. And maybe you're listening to this and you said, listen, I'm going to go start my own business and I want to be an entrepreneur, and that is awesome. But even if you're in that category, I want you to also just keep in mind that in your current role, you have an opportunity to not only build your personal brand and cross-functionally learn as many things as you can, but also kind of build those relationships that you can then take forward. So regardless of where you see your career growing, I'd rather for you to be safe than sorry. I work with a lot of fresh graduates in the young talent pipelines that are run. So basically people coming into the company, early career starters, and kind of the first 5 years of their careers. I work with a lot of them. And I can tell you for a fact that and also having obviously been in my 20s as well, what you want now is very different than what you might want or need in your 30s. And what I mean by that, don't waste your 20s because you don't need that promotion right now, because you still might be, living comfortably, in I don't know, with roommates or with parents or whatever it may be. At some point, you're gonna want more money, you're gonna want a promotion, maybe, or you're gonna want to start your own business. So the skills that you're learning in your job, it's your opportunity to take advantage of those things, to make sure that you're not 35, 40 years old and you've been stagnant in your career because you didn't put in the work in the things that actually matter as you get older. And so I just want you to be mindful of that and make sure that whatever decisions you're making about your career is based on, and it's based on just who you are and what you want right now, which is fair and I respect it. But I just want to make sure it's not to your detriment, because I've seen that happen. So anyway, just a quick note. Your manager, so staying hired. So from a manager perspective, your manager is your first advocate or your first signal, meaning that if you have a manager that's great, awesome. But if you don't have a manager that is good, meaning your manager is not advocating for you, your manager is not your sponsor, meaning they're not advocating for you in rooms that you're not in, then you need to find ways to manage up, which is a whole other conversation. And, I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. But managing up, if you have not a great manager who is not naturally a mentor and a coach, then it's up to you to learn how to manage up. And honestly, you're going to have to learn it in your career at some point. Many of you might already be experiencing this. I experienced it, I've experienced it in most of my jobs. Managing up is a whole other skill that is very, very important for staying hired. So build your relationship with your manager. If they're a great manager, wonderful. If they're not, start to get some advice, coaching, mentoring through the career development services at WGU and other resources to help you learn how to manage up. And know your numbers. Understand what is it that what impact you actually made in your organization, right? Understand what you bring, value, metrics, as much as you can. Document it and make sure the right people see that. All right, we'll cover that on visibility as well. Stay valued. So a couple of things here. At the end of the day, you're hired to do a job. All right. If you cannot do that job, companies don't operate as nonprofits. Unless you're a nonprofit company, but even then, you have a job and you have to do that job. I'll give you an example. I worked with a company where we had a particular tool we were using, a platform we we're using. It was a bunch of developers working on this tool. And then a new tool got introduced. And the next project we were kind of teaming people up for, they needed to use this other tool. And so we said, listen, guys, I know you're working, you got your 8 hours that you're working on client projects, but we really need you to start using this tool. And we got such pushback from a lot of people because we asked them to do this outside of the 8 hours, right? This is not, it was like really like small incremental stuff. And it was like 5 months they had to do it. And it was like a couple hours a week extra. So it wasn't anything extreme by any means. It wasn't like, we're like, you need to work 5 hours extra every day. No, couple hours a week extra. We know you have client work, but we need you to use this tool. And what I can tell you is that people who were on board automatically earned little stars with the management. People who were not on board automatically put in a little red flag category. Why? Because in order for you to stay valued, you need to continue to add value. And I think a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss that you're there to do a job. As much as we want to believe the companies, whatever ideology, ideology that you have about a company, the reality is business is business. Business is there to make money, and that's how they pay you. If you're not able to solve problems for customers because you don't have specific tools and skills in order to solve that problem, you will be on the cutting board. That is the reality, which is why a lot of people with layoffs have found themselves on. They've they've outgrown their skill set and they never developed. They never looked at what else is coming down the pipeline in my department, in my company, in my industry. Have I had that conversation with my manager? Have I expressed that I want to learn new technologies? Right? You have to stay value. You have to add value. That's it. Companies do not hire for the sake of hiring. Okay? You need to also look at yourself, position yourself beyond that job description. We live in a world, and this is a fact, no matter where I look, and you might not like what I'm about to say, but I do not know anybody in the years of career coaching that I've done of all different levels, successful people, up and down the career ladder, working with leadership and so on. I don't know anybody who ever stayed um, solid in a company and grew their career successfully by only working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Period. Nobody grows if you're not going to grow. Eventually you will hit a wall if you only think that you can work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we think it's a mindset thing, that we are looking at it as like, well, I'm only doing this for my employer, right? No, I'm not going to give them more than 8 hours. And I want to offer and invite you to have a little mindset shift if you don't already have it, and to say you're actually doing this for yourself. Nobody cares about you as much as you do. Your employer provides you resources, opportunities, systems, processes to help you do your job. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. And if you want to only do the 8 hours, that's fine. But then what I always tell people, even in my own company, don't ask for a promotion, don't ask for a raise, except the standard inflation. It just doesn't work that way. And the reason for that is not even about you necessarily. It's just companies need you to continue to elevate your skill set. And also, there's other people that are doing that. So why should you get promotion, not the other person? You always have to remember that, right? And the other thing here is that if you frame it as you're doing this for you, take advantage of every educational thing your company has to offer. Take advantage of all the mentoring, take advantage of all the company events where you can build relationships with people. Take advantage of that for your benefit. Every certificate you get, you're going to take it to that next level and so on. So anyway, if you're only doing your job description 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you're already behind. All right. The last thing here is just really, you need to position yourself as somebody who's a builder. You're not just a person who's executor, that you actually you're thinking a little bit about the next steps, right? And you don't have to have a strategy, depending on your role. Obviously, there's a lot of factors here. But what I mean is that you want to be a person who's offering help. You want to be a person who's curious. You want to be a person who's offering ideas, who's a builder, who's experimenting, who's doing things, right? So that you go from just, being a reliable, like, yeah, this person gets the job done, to like, they are essential. So when people are going down the layoff list, they're like, who are we going to keep? Who do you think they're going to keep? All right. And the last pillar here, before we shift gears a little bit, is the stay visible. And I know if I get a lot of pushback on this sometimes, even from clients, and they say, Elena, I don't want to be seen. I want to stay behind my laptop, and I don't want to go into the office, and I don't want to go to this, forced happy hour at work and so on. And you don't have to do all of these things, but you need to choose some activities that make you feel comfortable. Well, you should also choose something that makes you feel uncomfortable, but in a healthy way, right? Like, so get out of your comfort zone if you need to. But the point is, you need to be visible. It's not vanity. You're not out there just, just me. No, you're strategically making yourself visible in front of the right people in your company, right? And so who those right people are, depending on where you want to grow, right? So thinking to yourself, who are the key people you need to make sure know about your capabilities, what you bring to the table. Could be maybe just your manager. If you have a smaller company and the hierarchy is a little bit more kind of flat, so you can kind of access people in different departments at different levels, build those relationships, make time. If you're virtual and you don't have a chance to come into the office, schedule a little 5-minute check-ins with people, coffee dates, work dates, obviously, but, like little coffee chats with people and so on. So find creative ways to build relationships so people actually know who you are and what you do and what you bring to the table. All right. So you need to build that internal brand before you have an external one. And if you build a successful enough internal brand, and what I mean by successful is people know who you are, right? If it's a small company, most people should know who you are at least. People are willing to recommend you in the future, people who are willing to vouch for you, people who understand what you bring to the table. They can highlight 2 or 3 things of impact that you made, right, to other people. How many people in your company know what you do, what value you bring? How many people know your name? As simple as that. How many people know what you look like on camera, not with the little avatar, but you actually look like like on camera live, right? And so that is how you eventually will show up where decisions are made. Is you're going to grow in that because you are going to build those relationships, and it's all about relationships. It is, the more higher you go, sure, skill set is important, like the skills that you have that got you to where you are today. Relationships is what takes you to the next level, period. Every industry, every job, business, relationships, they're super, super important. And in order for you to build those, to have those relationships, you need to make sure people know you exist. I always say you can have the best resume in the world. If nobody knows you, you are irrelevant. And I don't mean you need to be best friends with everybody. You need to have a strategic group of people that need to know what is it that you do, who are deciding your career. All right. Any questions before we go into this next part? Are you still with me? Give me a thumbs up. I'm going to throw out another poll, by the way. just a pulse check. All right. Any questions? Thank you for the thumbs up. All right. Well, feel free to drop your questions. In the meantime, I want to, kind of do another. Let me just. Yeah, there you go. I want to do another poll. So if you can do the same thing, scan the QR code or drop it in the chat. Which of these pillars feel the most uncomfortable for you right now? And you can share why if you want. So the first pillar we talked about is stay hired, stay valuable, and stay visible. So if you're looking at these and you're like, actually, all of them sound great, maybe. Or maybe you're like, I really don't like this visibility thing. Okay, visible. So just give me some indication. Again, feel free to drop it in the chat as well if that's easier for you. Come on, we got more than one person. There you go. All right, give you guys a little bit of time. Keep them coming in. Okay, visible and valued. Okay, good. I mean, on the hired, we got it. Okay, it seems like it, unless one comes through. Good. I just give a few more seconds for the person to finish typing. Okay, visibility. Yeah, remote. Yep, we can talk a little bit about that. And a lot of you said, well, half of you basically said visible and valued. And if it feels like a little bit of a dirty word, you're like, okay, I don't want to be the self promotion and so on. They're different things, guys. It's just you have to make sure that people know who you are. It's just the name of the game. You gotta know that you gotta make sure that either you have a manager who's super advocating for you, and maybe that's all you need, depending on the size of your company, the size of your team, and so on, right? So just be mindful that, or you need to start working some of those relationships. And it is harder to do in the remote setting. If there's any, like, I know a lot of companies that are remote, they still have like in-person gatherings. If that's the case, definitely show up at those gatherings for those that said confusion of how to initiate remotely. If not, then like if you have like town halls or something like that, like one thing I'll tell you that also makes a difference is whenever we host, like in the company I'm with now, whenever we host like town halls or group meetings, and it really does make a difference when you have your camera on. If it's like an option, so you'll have like some people have cameras on, some people have cameras off. If there's an option to have a camera on, obviously if you feel comfortable, there's no other limitations on your side to have the camera on. If there's no like kind of pressing circumstances, I always say have the camera on. Even if you're the only person that has the camera on, have the camera on for a few seconds. This happens to me all the time. I'll have it. By default, my camera is always on. And when we start a meeting, whether it's a small meeting, large meeting, if I'm the only person that has the camera on, I will turn it off a few seconds later. I don't want to be just in your face by myself just so I can be visible, right? But read the room. But if you have like half the people have their camera on, half the people don't, especially if like your manager, leadership, or other key people have their cameras on, have your camera on. It makes a difference because in a remote environment, it's even easier to forget who you are unless we see the name, the face, and so on. And you will stand out from everybody else who doesn't have that camera on. It's a simple thing, but even starting with something like that. All right. Thank you guys for yeah, and somebody said like shy introverted. Yeah, and listen, it's you won't believe it, but I am a little bit of an introvert. And I tend to stay to myself most of the time, and it took a lot for me to come out of my shell and start networking. So it's like I have this like limited social battery, and I know when to use it. So maybe just identify your social battery range and find impactful strategic conversations where you can reach out in a way that's comfortable. Start with people that are a little bit more comfortable for you to reach out to, maybe somebody one-on-one, on camera, if possible, of course, and so on. So baby steps, essentially, if you're introverted and shy, but the only way to do it is actually just do it, like once or twice, try it, do it with like a safe person just to get a little bit more comfortable with it. But I totally get it. So all right, thank you. Now listen, you might have already been thinking about some of these things, right? And I want to really just share things that you might not be thinking about. And this is just somebody from myself who's been in a room where those decisions are made. I want to highlight some things that might not be as obvious, but are super, super important. And I promise you, people are watching. All right. People notice. That's another thing people don't understand is that, trust me, especially leadership, again, depending on the size of your company, et cetera, departments, people know. You know why people know? You know why your manager knows, why your leadership knows? Because they're responsible at the end of the year to develop. Everybody has a boss, right? Even the boss has a boss. The boss has clients. They're their bosses. So everybody at the end of the year needs to report about their employees. A lot of managers are graded essentially, assessed based on how successful their employees are. Who is doing what? Who's got promoted? Who's going, who's doing above and beyond? Who deserves a raise? Who needs a bonus, and so on. So they might not be saying it, but they're paying attention. All right. People pay attention. You're not as invincible as you might think, but also not for the good reasons. All right. So the first thing I want to put forward is recognizing your emotions. A couple of things. You don't need to like everyone you work with. This is key to staying valuable, staying employed. You're going to have people you completely do not stand. Check your emotions at the door. It's not personal. Remove it, unless obviously they're unreasonable and attacking you. I'm not talking about those extreme cases. I'm just talking about cases where you're like, I really just don't like this person. Like, I hate working with them. Find a way. Control your emotions in that way. I'll give you an example. I was coaching a client recently. She's a quite senior in her career. She's kind of like mid to senior in her career. And one of the reasons she wants to change from her current company is that she's in a very toxic environment, and she really just cannot stand her managers. She has like two people that she's working with very closely, both kind of like higher ups. And I told her, we can't control those people, but what I know for sure is that everybody has some sort of agenda. And there's a way to, again, recreate your mindset when it comes to dealing with difficult people. And I don't think the solution is to necessarily run away from that, because you're going to have difficult people in every single company. It's just what it is. There's always no, it's not going to be all holding hands, singing Kumbaya. In every company, you're going to have a difficult person. It's just what it is. So you might as well learn how to deal with those people. And one ways you learn how to deal with it is to recognize your emotions, right? Check your emotions to get ahead of the judgment. Because the thing what happens is that our emotions are heightened. Let's say, you're going into a meeting with this person, and you're already like, oh, like, kill me now, I'll have to deal with this person, right? You're already setting yourself up. But instead, you look at it as like, listen, this person has an agenda, I have an agenda. The more I understand what she needs to get out, what he needs to get out of this conversation, the faster and smoother this will go. It goes back to those relationships I was talking about. The more you understand what do those people really want, and what actually takes their, whatever, what's the word, what is the thing that rocks their boat, essentially, like makes them feel like they want to be a team player. You got to find those things, and you only find those things by removing your emotions and really just looking and understanding what is it that they're trying to do. And what you often will see is that that person is probably fighting for their life for a promotion, and that's why they're so aggressive in that meeting. Maybe that person is on a pip, and so they're being super, too much in whatever they're trying to deliver. Maybe they're just having a really hard time outside of their workplace, and we got to give them some grace, right? And they just don't know how to leave all that stuff at home, and they bring it into the workplace. There's a number of factors that you can play in your mind that will help you manage those emotions and remove yourself from the equation and just say, what can I do to make my life easier working with this person, right? And sometimes people are unreasonable, and those are rare. But dealing with difficult people and unreasonable people is two different things, right? And there are cases where, listen, you just gotta go. Honestly, you just gotta go. And it comes down to self-awareness. So I don't ever want somebody to stay in a difficult or toxic situation, but what I want you to think about is, what is it that makes you so upset about working with this person? Make sure just to check your own emotions, right? Because nobody wants an emotional employee. Nobody wants a drama person who just makes a big thing out of small thing. Being easy to work with is probably the biggest golden nugget I can leave you with today. Like, if you take away anything, it's just be easy to work with. That is so, so important. Be easy to work with. Just be easygoing. Have your boundaries, have your boundaries, but just be reasonable and easy to work with. That's it, right? So anyway, so you do have a lot more control here. So speaking of control, control what you can, which is the work that you do, your effort, Focus on things you can influence. And the best way to manage people that are, you know, maybe just difficult to work with is to not feed into that. To not, eventually it will rub off on them that you're just a more of a positive person and you're just more solution focused instead of focusing on the problem or feeding into the friction. It does take a lot. You have to be bigger than the other person essentially to be able to do that, and it's a lot of self-awareness, a lot of just understanding of just human psychology in parts and just experience. So it does help. Don't spend energy on things that don't matter. Your energy is very, very uh, transparent in the way you show up, right? And so, complaining, don't be that person. Um, that's another thing. Like, just tie it in with like being easy to work with. Nobody wants a complainer. I promise you, nobody wants a complainer. There are people that find a problem with everything. You know what makes a difference? If you're a if you're a solution person, right? Focus on solutions. There are going to be problems right and left. Don't go into gossip world. Don't go into that. Again, people talk. Your teammates that you might be best friends with today, you know, everybody's out for themselves. And the bigger the organization is, and depending on the hierarchy and a lot of things, it can be a very cutthroat environment. So don't be a person that complains. Don't engage in that gossip. It just drains your energy. It does nothing for your career. And complain to your friends, your significant others. Complain to people outside of your work. Be careful who you share things with internally. So be careful who you trust. Today, this happened to me in a little bit more mild way, but essentially what happened was I used to work among a colleague, and then I got promoted, and then now that colleague became she started reporting to me, and oh boy, she did not like that. She was older than me. She didn't feel like I should have been promoted, and so on. Um, anyway, we worked it out, but the point being is that that was like my biggest lesson, because we used to be like so close. We used to be like besties at work, right? And then I had to tell her to deliver certain things. I had to tell her to do things that I no longer had to do because I'm now focusing more on like strategy and other things. And I'm telling you, it was not a pleasant 2 months. And there was a lot of things I did wrong. There's a lot of things she did wrong. But the biggest lesson that I took away from it is be careful who you share information with. All of this shifts very fast. This happens I mean, if you might have already been experienced this in your work, and you might see this already. Don't share a lot of information. Be friends with people. Just be mindful. Don't talk about the senior leadership. Don't do any of those things. It might be very simple things, but I cannot tell you how much they impact. Walk away from those conversations. Don't be buddy buddies, because you never know who's going to be who's boss the next day, who's going to get promoted. So again, just be mindful of who you trust inside organizations. Couple more things here. So influence is a pure people skill. So what I mean by that is that the best way to make sure you stay employed is to be a person of influence, and that is just purely learning how to work with all different kinds of people, learning how building those understanding, like how do people like to communicate, what is their preference in specific ways, what does everybody need from you in your particular role, how can you add the most value to everybody that you work with, and how do you continue to elevate that value with every year, right? Again, remember, even if you're not planning on staying in that organization, this is a pure like playground where you're already there, you're working, people know you. Experiment in a safe way. This is all safe tactics that we're talking about. Experiment, reach out to people, talk to people. This is your way to just build up that personal brand, that and eventually that external brand. Build a great reputation of being somebody who is a person, who's a hard worker, who's a team player, who adds value, who's curious, who cares, who contributes. Be that person, right? And again, it doesn't have to be like this sounds overwhelming, Elena. No, pick one little activity you can do every day to build relationships internally. Take one activity to build visibility internally, one per week. 30 minutes of your time. Think about what can you do. Experiment. This is where AI comes in really, really handy, which we'll talk about in just a moment as we're wrapping up. Network strategically. So what I mean by that is, and I've learned this the hard way. I used to be a person who was like at every networking event. And I think if you have not gone through the process of going to as many events, as you possibly can in your industry and so on, to learn the skill of not just small talk, but building relationships with complete strangers, knowing how to recognize who you want to actually build a relationship, who's going to bring value and mutually beneficial, where you can bring value, and who's not. That only happens through relationships, through understanding people, through having conversations with as many people as possible. If you haven't gone through that exercise and you're like, hey, I can do it, I recommend you do it. If you're more introverted, I would try to find smaller groups, not huge conferences, but smaller groups where you can go and kind of really build on that muscle. Networking is really a muscle that you build, right? And it gets easier with time. And there's really no way to avoid it because it's truly, truly very, very important. And I don't think it's going out of style anytime soon. So think about that, right? And then after, if you've done that, now look at where do you actually need to build relationships that are more strategic. Strategic meaning, where do you see yourself growing? So a year, 2, 3 years down the line, where do you see yourself growing? Who's going to help you get there? Who can show you the way, maybe? Who can mentor you? Who can coach you? Who can open doors? So strategically meaning like focused on not just talking, not just like making friends for the sake of making friends or like networking, just going to an event, but like what are you actually trying to achieve with this network? And the last thing here is use AI. So another quick thing. So a lot of companies right now are pushing AI on everybody. I don't know if you guys seen those memes that are going around social media where it's like there's like a little there's multiple of them, but there's like a little, let's say like a little puppy, and then there's like a person trying to like, and the puppy's like employees and the person's like employer, and then there's like juice that they're trying to pour into it, and the juice is like AI, and it's like overflowing into this puppy's face, and it's just like gasping for air, and that's how it feels like what employers are doing right now with AI. They're just like shoving it down our throats, and like it's like it's like it's chaos, right? And there's a lot of jokes about it, but the reality is, when I go to conferences and when I sit with senior leadership, um, it's not a trend. AI is here. It's here to stay. I don't think it's going to have as huge of an impact maybe as we imagine, but it does have an impact. And for better for worse, we've already seen a lot of layoffs related to AI. There's a good website. Well, it's not good, but it's a useful website. It's called jobloss.ai, I think, jobloss.ai. And it basically tells you like how many jobs were lost currently, like up to like live like thing that goes like to say to like number that tells you how many jobs were lost as a result of AI, and like is it explicitly because of that, or is it related? So it's quite interesting to observe, but it's here, so you need to learn how to use it. I'm an optimist when it comes to AI. You need to be the person who understands AI. I don't think AI is going to replace you. What's going to replace you is the person who knows how to use AI. That's what's going to replace you if you're worried about that. And that's just the reality. And I see this happening. And I mean, I can spend hours with you just giving you examples of conversations I've recently had of companies that are saying, hey, like our customers want to do it faster, better, and with less people. And in order for us to have that contract, we need to oblige. And so that's what we're going to do. And so that means that a lot of people who don't know how to use AI are going to be just out of jobs. And so anyway, so you learn how to use AI. Claude code is amazing. I'm not a technical person. If I can do it, you can do it. All right. So, whoops. So anyway, so use AI. The other thing I wanted to mention here, first of all, any questions before I move on and we're kind of wrapping up? All right, feel free to drop your questions. Give you guys a minute to think about it. All right, I'll come back to the questions. So yeah, so using, I think Claude, Anthropic. So Anthropic has like a whole list of like free courses you can take about how to use Claude. I like Claude personally, but there's a bunch of other ones. And just start playing around, start how you can make it more, how you can make yourself more productive essentially in this. Quick, another Slido, like takeaway from today so far. And then we'll wrap up with just one more slide and open up to Q&A. So again, you can drop it in the chat as well. As a matter of fact, drop it in the chat for me. How about that? Let's skip this. Drop it in the chat. Tell me, what are some things that you guys, maybe was new to you, maybe it was, don't just work from 9 to 5. Yeah. Yeah. Visibility is important. Um, Even if it's difficult, yeah, networking is essential, a key part to maintaining momentum. Absolutely. Visibility is in vanity, strategy. It's a different perspective to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. Build influence. Absolutely. Keep putting those in. Couple of just things that just a couple of more reminders is that doing the work just isn't enough. You have to be seen, guys. You just have to. It just doesn't work like that. People need to be visible. There's only few cases where people are exceptionally good at like a specific technical skill, or it's a very unique skill set that, no matter how invisible they are or how antisocial they are in the company will keep, but it's very rare. It's very rare. Those are unique individuals, those are exceptions, right? Your reputation is what people say about you when you're not in a meeting. And you know what, most of the conversations that come up is that person is a team player, that person is easy to work with, that person is always happy to help, right? That person communicates really well, they show up when it matters, right? And so on. So stay hired by being someone that's hard to lose. Make yourself so invaluable inside the company that it's hard to lose. And this is where you can also, as if you're having mid reviews or annual reviews, whatever it may be, bring that up with your manager and say, like, what does success look like for me in this role? Right? Ask those questions, even if they're not asking you those questions. What does success look like for me in this role? Where can I add the most value? What does exceeding expectations look like for me? Ask those questions. Those are really, really valuable. Don't just meet expectations. Nobody gets promoted meeting expectations at review season. It's only if you exceed expectations you should be promoted. That's just the reality. Anyway, feel free to connect with me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and so on. I'm the only Elena Agaragimova. You'll find all my stuff. I'm mindful of the time, so let me stop talking. All right, let me just exit this. All right, let's see. Questions, takeaways. Don't trust your coworkers too much. It's an important one, I promise. I don't know, Artie, what do you think about that one?
It's so funny that got dropped in there. Occasionally there are some coworkers in our office, and I know there's some people in here that are my coworkers. You never know. You never know.
Not them, not them. Think ahead, not just in the present role. Networking, be seen, visible in the work and the voice it. Networking is not just networking, value. Yep. What you shared about technicals do not hold as much as we, yeah. So technicals do not hold as much weight as they used to. The biggest thing is communication. That's one thing that comes up over and over again when people highlight communications is a big one. There's a fine line. One thing I have to say, there's a fine line between asking questions and being disruptive, right? So I've seen this in real time with people in their 20s as well as people in their 40s and 50s. And there's a very fine line between you trying to challenge the conversation and you want to bring something to the table that's, thought provoking, to you're just disruptive and immature, right? So just being mindful of, like, because, there's a lot of talk of like, well, you should speak up and you should make yourself known and so on. There's a way to do it. And if you're going to do it with class. And the reason I bring this up because this literally happened last week. I observed somebody who's a probably a very senior person in their career, and let's just say people notice, and it's not a person that's going to be considered for much. And I think just be mindful of the disruptions. The other thing I want to mention real quick is showing up in front, showing up in terms of if you're on camera and so on. So one thing I struggle with, when working with a lot of software developers, again, you know how they tell you bring your whole self to work? Well, I can tell you, please don't. Because depending on the company you're working with, the company culture, the clients you work with, you don't need to bring your whole self to work. So I want you to be mindful that when they say that, it's first of all, who's saying it, and it's probably not an employer or a CEO or etc. Don't bring your whole self to work. And what I mean by that is that if you're a developer or some kind of whatever field you're in, I'm just giving a developer because this happens, and you show up in a hoodie and your hair is like this in an internal meeting, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm okay, I will take it. But do not show up looking like that in front of a client, and then when you're given a comment about it, you have a bad taste in your mouth. I don't know what was the expectation, but you see this a lot. And I can promise you that you can be all that you can be, but with a filter when it comes to specific work that you do. And when, in my case, we work with a lot of federal agencies, It's just not a good look. And you're representing the company. First, you're representing yourself always. It's for you and you, but also you're representing the company, and that has to be standards. And so do not bring your whole self to work. You don't need to tell everybody what's going on in your life. You don't need, people don't need to know everything, all your drama, all your etc. Keep it to yourself. There's a place and a time to do this in the workplace, meetings and so on. And we don't need your pets walking across laptops, which happens all the time. And I love pets. But when you're doing a demo, do not have your pets crawling across your laptop. Put them in a cage, put them in another room, do what you need to do. All right. RJ, over to you.
Yeah, and so there is a question in the chat,
Yeah.
and a great question. Um, as far as AI becomes more integrated into workplaces, what skills or behaviors do you think make someone more likely to stay valuable long term beyond just the technical ability?
Yeah, so great question. So a couple of things. First, if you're not looking at reports such as like there's like a bunch, you can Google them, like future of work, future skills and so on. Start looking those up, seeing how your role is going to be impacted, like what's on the horizon for your role. Ask yourself the question is what you do today, can it be automated by AI? Like, can this be, is the work that you're doing is a lot of admin, administrative, like even a lot of the marketing stuff, right? I do a lot of marketing and a lot of podcasts and all of that. I used to have people that do it. I literally don't need anybody anymore. I have a Claude, an agent that does everything for me. So think about so when you're learning AI, the part of the learning process is to understand what it can do that can replace you. So that's number one in terms of skill sets, in terms of like technical or things that you bring to the table. The other thing is communication, positive attitude, willingness to learn, ability to manage change, managing your energy, and so on. Those things are very, very important. Attitude is the most important thing. It's not my opinion, it is a fact that I hear from senior leadership all the time. Being easy to work with, the things I talked about, super, super important. Communication in general, right? That's super important. The other thing I want to mention, and it slipped my mind now, but it'll come back anyway. But yeah, so those things are super important. The other one slipped my mind anyway, it'll come back. Oh yeah,
I'm
so sorry, but yeah, just talk, I have to put one thing. So sometimes you are going to be in a toxic environment and it's going to suck, and you're going to have people, managers that are not good managers, and there's no room to grow. And no matter how great you truly are, and you can be all of those things, and that's when it's just time to go. So I do want to say that there are organizations and companies and managers that you just have to leave, and you have to make that decision. But until you make that decision, make sure that you take the most that you can, the most learnings, because it will make the next opportunity so much easier for you, because you're going to recognize toxic environments from a mile away, and you're not going to get that next job in the same environment, and you'll be able to thrive and be just fine. It'll be easy peasy for you if you can get over the toxicity of a workplace. So yeah, that's all. That's what I wanted to say.
I love that call out too, because sometimes I feel like people just don't know when to move on. They feel like, hey, I'm in a great opportunity, like, and they can't process that. So I love that call out. I don't think enough people are able to do that, especially with how the current job market is too. Like they're afraid of what potentially could happen if they leave. So great call out there. I'm looking at time. I see we are at time, and I just want to thank you, Elena, for jumping in and sharing your insights. I think this is so valuable, especially as people are in different positions and they're looking, there have been major layoffs at some of these larger corporations over the last couple of years. So making sure that you are staying relevant in your visible in the workplace. I do want to give you the opportunity, though. Any closing remarks that you kind of want to wrap the session up with here? Anything that maybe you didn't hit on that you wanted to during the session? I just want to give you that platform to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I try to be very practical, and I do realize that I give you a lot of things, and some of you might be sitting there and you're like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know how to position myself. I'm well aware of that. I just wanted to at least give you the kind of framework and template so you start thinking about it. So two things I want to offer. One, definitely AI, like use Claude. It's a good coach. Make sure you're giving it the right questions, the right prompts to gives you the information, but it's a great person to brainstorm with about how to do that, right? Like brainstorm with AI. The other thing is on my blog, I have so many articles just about that that actually gives you the step by step. I mean, I can spend hours on each thing that I covered. So like I have so much content I would love to share with you. It's all free. There, I don't charge for anything on my web. Just look at my website on the blog, read the blogs, watch the Confessions of a Career Coach. I talk about all of that. I give very practical steps. It's the best thing I can offer because I know I've opened up a lot of like boxes, and I want to make sure there's some meat that you can take away from that, and all of that is like in the stuff that I talk about. It's just too much to cover in an hour. So, but I hope at least this was helpful and at least got you thinking from a perspective of somebody who's in those rooms.
No, this was fantastic. At least to start the conversation. You know, I feel like we don't talk about this enough because sometimes it makes people feel uncomfortable. So that's something we appreciate you jumping in and sharing your insight. I think there's a lot of takeaways here. As Elena said, like check out her blog, check out her podcast. Some great information there. But Elena, thank you for jumping in and providing this insight. We certainly
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it. And I hope everybody was able to take something away and apply it moving forward. As a reminder, session was recorded. We will send that out tomorrow, and certainly keep an eye out for other sessions coming down the pipeline. But like I said, Elena, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us here at WGU. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, everyone, have a fantastic rest of the day. Take care.